And we welcome you to The Real Story. I'm Al Terzi along with Lori Perez. And state lawmakers, boy, what a deal they have, huh? A lot of budgetary red ink to eliminate. I'm talking about gallons and gallons of it. And the options? Lousy and lousier.
That's for sure. City and town leaders and state lawmakers are worried communities and some services might lose their footing with some of the ideas in Governor Malloy's budget plan.
We have Senator Tony Harp with us, also Representative Sean Williams, to offer their thinking. First, I want to talk a little bit about one of the governor's ideas, which was to reduce that property tax, eliminate it on cars, exempt the first $20,000 of assessed value. This is going to kill towns and their cities and their money they've been counting on. And is this just shifting the burden, the state's burden of controlling spending and taxation?
Well, I think that my town is worried. We think that it'll be about $13 million for New Haven, which is huge and would mean that there'll be a lot of tough decisions that have to be made. But one of the things that we hope to do, at least in our caucus, is to find ways to offset the cost to towns. It was a proposal that was done a few years ago, and the only way that we can really do it is if we make up for the difference for towns. I can't imagine that any town wants to lose that amount of money.
I understand $520 million statewide is what we're talking about here.
Yes, it's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. So, well, how do you make it up?
Well, I think what you do is just don't do it. I mean, you don't often see Republicans opposed to decreasing or eliminating taxes, but in this particular case, this automatically means a property tax increase for people who own homes, because it's a huge amount of money for cities and towns, and cities have to figure out a way to provide those essential public services that people want. People want and expect, police and fire and public works and things like that, and this virtually guarantees that either those things get cut or property taxes go up. At least a few years ago, when Governor Arell had proposed this idea, she had proposed to fund it, to give cities and towns the lost revenue, the revenue that they would have lost had the plan been implemented. There's a lot of us at the time who were opposed to it, though, because we didn't have a lot of faith that state government, the next time we got into some jam, would continue to send the money. I mean, that would have been one of the first places that got cut. So if you want your property taxes to go up, this is your plan, but I don't think most people in Connecticut do.
But why are property taxes the only tool in the toolbox?
Well, we've been talking for years about tax reform, property tax reform. It is a regressive way of collecting taxes and funding government, but that's the system we have right now, and until we completely shake that whole thing down and change the way that we finance local government, this is what we got. This is the hand that we've been dealt. I don't think most people want their property taxes to go up, and they don't want their police and fire to get cut, and that's what you're guaranteed if this happens.
These are not the times to change that system. How would you do that? I mean, it's been so ingrained in the way we operate.
Well, I think that we haven't given up on the idea. There are a number of people in the Democratic caucus in the Senate that are looking to see if there are ways that we can pay for it. But we agree that it really does need to be paid for, because the cities are really worried that if they don't have that, as you heard, will have to increase the property tax. But we are looking for ways. So, don't be surprised, we may have a proposal for you.
Oh, there's a hint. Stay tuned for breaking news there.
Are there lots in efficiencies that you think that towns and cities can turn to try and make up a good percentage of that? Or?
Well, I think that they count on that revenue, and they need actual revenue. I think that many towns have already used almost all of the efficiencies that they have in their little bag of tricks. So honestly, I think that we're going to have to find a way to replace the revenue.
Well, how are the towns and cities making out? I mean, put the property tax thing aside if we can, and education cost sharing and all. What's the bottom line for cities and towns?
Well, I've talked to several mayors, some of whom were at the Capitol last week protesting the governor's budget proposal, and each one of them was opposed to the plan because they know that the bottom line is that their cities are not going to be held whole, that they're not going to get more money, they're going to get more mandates put on them, they're going to have the whole burden shift around. For example, the governor's proposing to take pilot money that the state sends to cities to sort of substitute for tax money that they otherwise would get.
Payment in lieu of tax.
Correct.
Money, yeah, right.
He's suggesting that we take that money and put it into education, which is another hit to the public works, police, and fire side of the budget. The mayors are not happy with this, and many of them, of course, are in the same party as the governor. They're Democrats. They know that this is a bad thing for them. Look, we should look at comprehensive property tax reform. We got a big problem in Connecticut right now that we have to tackle, and we only have a few short months to do it. Got a big budget deficit. We have unemployment that is still way too high for all all of our likings. Those things need to be dealt with, and they need to be dealt with now.
But I thought that the governor said that payment, that pilot money, is not as restricted as it's being made out to be, that in fact towns would have some flexibility.
Well, I think that what he's basically saying that the towns would only have to meet their current MBR, and that that basically means that at least for the next 2 years, those dollars could be spent on other things. And for the peak watt pilot, he's suggesting in his budget that LoSiP be used, and that there's more flexibility built into that program for mayors. You know, I think that people like the way that we've always done it. We're the land of steady habits, and to do all of these very creative and interesting things is difficult for some of our mayors.
Well, you know, the root cause of this problem, though, is the fact that the legislature of the state of Connecticut forces cities and towns to do so much that they don't want to do or that they could do differently. You know, I think a lot of us just believe that if we stayed out of their business and let them run their own local governments the way that they would want to run them or the way that they could run them, that they could find those efficiencies. But we force a lot of mandates on cities and towns that cost a lot of money, and we're left in the situation saying, well, if we cut a little bit out of their budget here, how's it going to affect them? Let's let them figure it out on their own. Unfortunately, every single year that goes by, we put more mandates on local governments, and that causes property taxes to go up.
It's still not clear to me with this budget how we're going to get out of this hole. I mean, the governor said he's proposed more than $1.8 billion in spending reductions over the next 2 years. Are these real spending reductions?
Well, I mean, the overall budget's increased, I think, 9.7% under his proposal. So, you know, you look at the numbers, most people would say 9.7% is 9.7%. And there's some inside baseball terminology that we use in the Capitol called current services. And so he's saying that we're going to slow the rate in the growth of spending. But to the average person who's got to foot the state government bill through their income taxes and other taxes, they're looking at it and they're saying spending's going up.
But I've heard from a lot of my constituents and people from around the state that they're really concerned that spending has gone down too much. And so, yes, it's gone up, but not enough to keep up with current services. And so as a result, every day I get at least 100, 300, sometimes 1,000 letters from people who use our hospitals very concerned about those cuts. So to say that there aren't real cuts in the budget is not accurate.
Right, because beyond the cities and towns, the impact on cities and towns, there are lots of departments and services who are worried that they might be affected.
Right. I think that particularly we're hearing from the hospitals in particular. We're hearing from some of the schools worried that we will cut them to make up for some of the cuts in the hospitals. In the first year, the governor cut $208 million out of hospital. In the second year, $325 million. And whether we like it or not, they're the core of our healthcare delivery system. All of us count on them being strong. None of us want any of our hospitals to close or for them to have to lay off people because it directly affects our health.
Right.
So what do we like in the governor's budget?
Well, you know, I think there's more that's disliked than liked. I mean, and in fact, I think it's universally disliked. You see mayors that don't like it. You see business leaders that don't like it because their taxes are going up. I've heard a lot of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle who say they don't like it. What the end result is going to be, I don't know. My hope is that it's an improvement upon what has been suggested by the governor, not something that gets worse. I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of bills come in front of my committee, the Finance Committee, which propose to raise taxes even more than what has been proposed by the governor. There's a proposal, for example, to tax companies that are sitting on too much cash. So companies that were lucky enough or had the intestinal fortitude enough to go out and earn a profit, the proposal that would tax those companies and take that money and use it for business loans and that sort of thing by force of government. There's a proposal to tax soda and things like that. So, you know, there's never enough money to do all the things that we want to do. I want to do a lot of things too, and I agree with Senator Harp. I don't think we should be cutting hospitals. That's the last thing we should do. They already took a big whack in December when we did our deficit mitigation plan. But my concern is that going forward, the go-to is going to be, let's figure out how to raise more taxes. People are taxed enough. Enough is enough.
I think there are some good things in the budget. Actually, the biotechnology corridor that the governor has the vision to invest in, I think is really very important for the growth and the future of our state. And having UConn poised to be a part of that. As you know, down in my area, Yale is already a big player in that area, but here we have to move into the second phase of Jackson Labs, but also have the opportunity to use bonding money to actually build programs at the University of Connecticut as well as in this area so that we can connect and really be a part of the biotechnology corridor. And I think that's really very exciting.
Well, Senator Harp, thank you very much. You have the last word. Representative Shawn, thank you very much.
Thanks.